Hello everybody and welcome back to the Leeds Lens. It is the Friday night show, and on the Friday night show, as always, we always seem to get into very weird topics. It's always my favourite show of the week actually, because we get you guys involved and we go into all different topic areas. Although, must admit, I'm a bit tired today. So, hence, if you think I'm shouting, it's to try and wake myself up a bit. You know, you've got to get on board with it sometimes. But yes, we will be talking about Leeds as always on the Friday night show. And we have got a few stories to get into, obviously, before we get into some of your guys' questions. So first of all, let's start with the first story. Actually, we need to talk what we're going to talk about first, don't we? Blimey, I am a bit all over the place. Anyway, we've got today, Gnonto has been linked away from Leeds United. There's a Saudi move there, and also Leeds United have reportedly put a price tag on it, so we'll talk a bit about that. We're also going to talk about Gnonto, Ampadu and Darlow in what was a bit of a drubbing yesterday in, of course, their game against England. Obviously, as an England fan, glad that happened. Naturally, I mean, it's only friendly, so I don't really care. I'm not obsessed with England in truth. But I guess as an Englishman, I've got to be particularly happy with that. Although the main thing, obviously, is that no one gets injured. But yeah, they all played there, so we'll talk about that. And of course, because it's Friday, we'll get into some of your guys' questions as always. But let's start with the first story. And let's get up at the beautiful man. Of course, Wilfried Gnonto. As you can see, I am in a bit of a golf fit as well, you know, as it comes. Anyway, the report said that Saudi Arabia clubs Neom and Al-Ittihad, both owned by obviously the actual Saudi state, the PIF, are both preparing approaches for Wilfried Gnonto ahead of the January transfer window. Now, of course, if I take you all back to the start of the summer transfer window, there was a lot of rumours going around then, actually, that Leeds United would go, or Saudi Arabia would go in the market for Wilfried Gnonto. And I think when you look at Saudi Arabia and what they've been trying to do over the last few years, obviously when it all launched, they brought the likes of Ronaldo in, they brought a number of other players in, as you know, and it was more, let's get some high-profile names in, but maybe at the end of the careers. There was loads of examples of this. But actually, in the more recent few years, they've changed their approach and they are going for sort of young and upcoming players. They're trying to pick off the best players in world football at the younger age. Obviously, we know they went a big move from Mbappe. That didn't really work for them. But they've tried for a number of players. I can't think off the top of my head, actually, loads of examples. But there is. It's definitely been a change of approach from Saudi Arabia. And the new one is, of course, Wilfried Gnonto. And this is set to be something that they actually try to pursue in the January transfer window. In terms of where Leeds United are about with this, I think Leeds United are open to any sort of situation. I think Leeds United know, obviously with their current climate, that potentially the deals are going to have to be done in the January transfer window. As we know, for Leeds United to spend, they're probably going to have to offload some players, if not in the January transfer window, before June the end of July or July the 1st. So Leeds will have to offload some players. And obviously Wilfried Gnonto is one of the main reasons for selling him, potentially, would be that he actually would represent pure profit. Not quite. I think he's got about $1 million left on his book value. But he is a huge profit player because, let's be honest, he's probably worth, what, 15, 20 million, maybe even more. Leeds United apparently actually have slapped a 30 million price tag on Wilfried Gnonto. But regardless, there's a lot of value in that in comparison to what we actually paid for him and what the book value represents. It's different to sort of Aronson in that setting and a number of other players that obviously Leeds United would like to probably offload. But that's the question, isn't it? Like, we've obviously got potential. The reported fee that Leeds United are looking for is around the £30 million mark. Now, there is a bit of a report going around that there is actually a sell-on clause in Wilfried Gnonto's contract. How much truth in this, in my opinion? Probably not that much. But the reported sell-on clause is around the 40% mark, which seems too high for me. I can't see it being 40%. Maybe I'll prove wrong because I know he came in as a young player from Zurich. But for me, I think you're probably talking, if he has got a big sell-on clause, what we deemed a big sell-on clause would be something around 20 to 25%. That's what, from what I know about football, and which is not obviously everything, but from what I know from studying the game, naturally these usually sell-on clauses, the max end you're paying is usually 20 to 25%. Usually they're more like 10% if you're going to get anything. I think that's something we've obviously got on Charlie Cresswell. But yeah, it's a tricky one with Gnonto, isn't it? Because I think if you guys are like me, nobody's ever not for sale. Everything has got a value. Like, and I don't really want to sell Ethan Ampadu. I don't want to sell DCL. I don't want to sell Goodmanson. If the right price comes in, I'd probably let him go because everybody has got a price within reason. I think when you get to the top of the game, the likes of Mbappe's, etc., maybe don't. But at our level, naturally, everybody's got a price. And with the situation Leeds United are in, where we know we're sort of pondering around the sustainability laws at this moment in time, and we're right on the edge. Naturally, we've got to have outgoings to sort of to help you with your incomings. This has got to be how it works. So Gnonto is going to be one of them players that if he represents good value, which he does, Leeds United, regardless of what we want, are going to have to entertain offers. Now, we don't mean you have to sell him cheap. It just means if we get an offer at a certain level, they'll probably take it. And I think where Leeds United are at, around the 30 million mark for me, if Leeds United got 30 million for Wilfried Gnonto, I'd be taking it, if I'm being totally honest. I would be taking it. I'd potentially go even a bit less. So I do understand that there has to be movement in the January transfer window. Because if Leeds United, say, could get 30 million quid, I don't think they'll get that much, if I'm being honest. But we know Saudi Arabia do have endless pockets in comparison to maybe European teams, naturally, because they just want the best players. They're not going to pay over the books. I think people talk about this all the time with Saudi, like, oh, yeah, but they've got unlimited money, blah, 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 blah. They do. But if you overpay on a certain player, which we've seen with Newcastle, and I've seen their ownership talk about this, if you overpay on one player, naturally people are expected to overpay on every single player. And I think that's the sort of trap that Scum are in at this moment in time, where because they've overpaid for so many years for certain players, naturally, like Brentford in the summer, just waited and waited and waited to get Mbeumo. So I don't think the Saudi Arabian clubs are as stupid to do that, in my opinion. So I don't think they're going to pay ridiculously over market value for Gnonto, but I do think they might look at it for 30 million quid. And if Leeds United, that's where value now. If that's what they want for Gnonto, then that's what the Saudi Arabian clubs are going to pay. But I do think there's something in this. I'm not saying that sort of we're going to sell Gnonto in January, but I do think at this moment in time we've got a few players, the likes of Pascal Struijk, I think, the likes of Wilfried Gnonto, and because of where they are in the sort of payment structure, and because of how football is now with PSR involved, naturally some of these players are going to have to move at some points in time. That's going to be how it works. You've got to trade. We can't just buy and buy and buy. You have to play a trade, and because of the sort of pure profit that naturally Wilfried Gnonto represents, he might be one of them that has to move on. Because just think of it this scenario. Would you rather Gnonto, or would you rather 30 million quid, which might get you a number 10 and it might get you a right winger? That's when it sort of opens the barrier up a bit, in my opinion. So where am I at with this? Is sort of probably where you guys are at and probably why you're watching. My honest opinion is, with Gnonto, that if we can get something around 20 million, because of the pure profit he represents, I would be open to the deal of Wilfried Gnonto. I really would. And 20 million sounds low, and people are probably going to get mad at me in the chat. But 20 million, I think, would be decent, because I think with 20 million, you could potentially go get Harry Wilson on the right wing, who I think is going to be around the 10 million mark. You could potentially go get a Spurtzan, who I think, again, will be around the 10 to 15 million mark. And you've upgraded 2 positions there for just Wilfried Gnonto, who in Daniel Farke's starting 11 at this moment in time, I don't think he's in it. And I think this brings in the whole conversation of Wilfried Gnonto and where is that? And if you guys have watched for a while now, I made a video about this about sort of, I think about 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago now. And we talked about Wilfried Gnonto in a bit of detail and his development and what's happened with Wilfried Gnonto at Leeds United at this moment in time. And I look back at sort of his best games, and I said this on a show the other day in the Dream Team show that I did. Gnonto's best games for Leeds United have still been under Jesse Marsh into the 2022-23 season, in my opinion. Like, when we got relegated, he was the star boy for me. Over Somerville, he was the one I wanted to keep. He was the one that was setting teams on fire and being outstanding in the Premier League. As I said, Villa away, when Gary Neville was saying that he was ready for Man City. I remember West Ham at home where he scored. I remember the Cardiff game when he was unplayable and he scored 2 goals in the FA Cup, and I think we won the game 5-2. But since we went down to the Championship and since Farke's come in, I don't think we've seen the progression in his game that I expected. I don't think we've seen that. I don't think he's any further in his development than he was when he was 19 years old coming through at Leeds United in the 2022-23 season. Like, look at Gnonto's best games for Leeds. It's still in that first year, in that first year that he came into the club. And I'm disappointed because I think there's a player there with real ability. And if he went to another club, would I be that surprised if he shone and flew off and flew into another element in terms of his performance levels? Probably not. Probably not. Because I think the quality's there. I think he's got a great IQ. I think he's a good ball striker. I think his understanding of each position, how to play, it's really good. And I think you will get, if someone could buy Gnonto and start him on the left wing, and it might just click. But I just think at Leeds United at this moment in time, it hasn't done that. Not that he's been awful. I'm not saying that like he's fallen off a cliff. I just don't think, like, as I said, look at what we saw from the season from Somerville in that first year. I thought that would be Gnonto. Not that I didn't think it would be Somerville, but I thought it'd be Gnonto. He was the one that was further in the development. He was the one that I would have started over Gnonto. If you'd have said to me in the year we got relegated, who would you rather keep, Somerville or Gnonto? It would have been Gnonto. But we just haven't seen that player development. And yes, there's time to come. And he's only 21 years old. But after a certain period of time, we're gonna have to see that from Gnonto. We're gonna have to see that next step up. We're gonna have to see that improvement in performance levels. Because it's not been, as I said, it's just not fully clicked at this moment in time. Mark says, evening all, hope you're well, mate. Yeah, I'm good, mate. Thank you very much for asking. But yeah, as I saw, my theory is that Gnonto, for whatever reason, isn't fully in Daniel Farke's plans, and it's not sort of where he sees the future of the right wing position. So if your manager doesn't want him, and I'm not saying he doesn't want him in terms of he won't play at all, but I don't think he's 100% his favourite. Do you have to look at that and move him on at some moment in time? I'm not saying you do, but I think if the right offer's there, I think you've got to look at it. I really do. And I think if you listen to what neutrals would say, they would say that you've got to sometimes cash in on players to improve the rest of the team. And if he's not favoured, sometimes you've got to move players on. So if it was me, if the fee was in and around the 20 million mark, I would probably go there. I really would. Because I just haven't seen the player improvement, in my personal opinion. Anyway, let's move on to the next story and move away from Wilfried Gnonto into Rodon Ampadu and Darlow, who obviously featured for Wales last night against England in, if we're being honest, a bit of a drubbing, a game that was over after the first 20 minutes. Look, I think I actually, when I watched it, obviously finished the show yesterday, went down and watched sort of the second half. And I know they were worse in the first half, and I heard the sort of pundits talk after the game. I think it was Rob Page there, Roy Keane, Ian Wright as well. And they were saying that actually in the first half, Wales were quite poor, and obviously in the second half, they upped the level, and it was a more challenging game for England. I didn't think from what I watched, Rodon was that bad. I know he's been slammed in the media. From what I saw, I don't think he had that bad a game. And I was listening to some fans as well talk about the first half, and people who watched the game in the first half, talking today actually. And they said the same. They actually thought Rodon had a good game. I think Darlow was a bit shaky at times, and I don't think Ampadu had his best game. But I think Rodon, again, he's proving that he can step up. And as I said, he was in a team that got beat 3-0 yesterday. So let's not go over the top here. But I don't think it was the worst performance in the world from Joe Rodon from what I witnessed, if I'm being totally honest. So I think this is something to build on. Obviously, they've got a huge game against Belgium on Monday night, which will decide, I think, if they get it'll push them towards getting automatic qualification for, of course, the World Cup, which would be massive for Wales and Craig Bellamy's side. So let's hope they can do that, I guess. But in the same breath, I don't think it's the end of the world because, you know, do we want our players rest in the summer rather than going to a tournament? I don't think with the worst case scenario. But overall, I think with this international break, when we talk about it and we talk about players' performances, obviously we want to play well. Truthfully, we want them not to get injured, don't we? Like, if we're looking at anything in the international break, it's hopefully our players play well, but just don't get injured. If you don't play a minute, fine, just don't get them injured. And which is why, obviously, when we talked about Neil Okafor yesterday, it was nice, actually, that he wasn't going to Switzerland because, again, we can wrap him in cotton wool and he won't get injured. But, of course, it'd be nice for the lads if they come back with a bit of a bounce. Because I think when you look at sort of what happened, was it last year or the year before? James missed a vital penalty for Wales, which I think knocked them out in maybe a playoff game. I can't fully remember. But I remember the penalty quite vividly. He missed quite an important penalty. And we actually did see his sort of form in the league dip, actually, a bit after that, in my personal opinion. So you do want to keep them playing well and keep up the sort of momentum that these players have got. But again, I think Joe Rodon proved at times yesterday that he can keep up with the best, which I think we've seen throughout this whole season so far. I think he's had a really decent season so far, Joe Rodon. And the other thing that I was looking at today when I was looking at the sort of schedule is that actually it's not that bad at this moment in time. Like, I think BL comes back on the Tuesday. I think he comes back on the Monday, but every game is over after the Tuesday, which means that obviously then when we play Burnley on, of course, the Saturday, everyone should be back anyway and probably prepared. So it's just important that obviously the likes of Tanaka, BL, I think for them massively, it's important that they play well because, of course, they're the ones trying to fight back into the team. But the likes of Ampadu's and Rodon's and Darlow's, etc. at this moment in time, although he's probably in competition with Perry right now, I do think that they can just just carry on playing well is what I'd say, and just don't get injured. Do not get injured. Anyway, a bit quieter tonight in the chat. I think it's probably because international break, and is El Tanaka playing at this moment in time as well? It might be, but anyway, it might be I've lost my voice here. It might be a quicker show today, anyway, because they're the main topics we're going to get into. Anyway, yeah, we'll wrap it up there then. Thanks all for watching, as always. If you have got to this point and you've enjoyed the show, if you could drop a like, subscribe, all that good stuff, because I'm such a small channel, it basically really helps me, because naturally I don't get that many likes on each video anyway, so if you could do that, that would be